Hello and welcome. I am George Schlacek.
The one and only.
And this is Bicycle Touring Talk, episode 61. We're just a few days into a coast-to-coast ride across Canada, the second largest country on Earth. I was stealth camping in Abbotsford BC, where I had found an unmaintained and vacant piece of land that had seemed suitable for that just before dark. As is typical with stealth camping, I was up early. Camping like that is a bit of a gray area. You'll often end up doing it because it saves a ton of money, but sometimes without knowing whether it's legal because bylaws are different wherever you go. First thing on the agenda next morning was breakfast at Tim Hortons. Not because it's so good, but because it was available and cheap.
What?
The plan was to go to Hope that day. Hope. Hope is where the Kettle Valley Railway used to begin, or end, whichever way you were traveling. To me, it meant the beginning of the KVR, which is part of the Trans-Canada Trail. My expectation was to ride this trail almost to the Alberta border. Starting out, however, I had to ride on the shoulder of the Trans-Canada Highway, a 4-lane expressway that isn't exactly bike-friendly.
Well, after a good night's sleep in my tent and a coffee and breakfast at Tim Hortons, I'm now on the only Trans-Canada that I could find around here. It's the Trans-Canada Highway, and I'll be on the shoulder for a bit.
There was a rest area near Chilliwack that provided some welcome relief from the road noise and an opportunity to get cleaned up for the day. I also used it to do some basic maintenance on the bike, mainly cleaning and lubricating the chain. Staying on course wasn't easy because there was a poorly marked detour for bicycles and other slow vehicles to get around a narrow bridge across the Chilliwack River.
So here I am, I got a problem. See, it says here, vehicles incapable of 60 kilometers an hour, pedestrians, bicycles, farm implements prohibited. So down there is a road, see that one? But I was there just before and it says there's no exit.
I basically got lost pretty good, as I wasn't familiar with the area at all.
So I'm going this way and there's supposed to be a detour that I can take. It should be indicated even, but I got some little map here.
Thankfully, there were other cyclists. When I tried to ask a lady who was riding a road bike, she didn't even acknowledge me, which was a bit discouraging. Eventually, I met a cyclist who was kind enough to explain in detail how to get past Chilliwack without going back on the expressway. He first decided to ride along with me for a short distance, but then he stayed with me for over 30 kilometers. I was grateful for the guidance and the company. Mike, as I'll call him here, was a strong cyclist who also set the pace. He finally turned around when we reached the spot where Highway 1 became the only option. but not before we took a short break. Mike took a picture of me, which prompted me to ask if I could take one of him too, which, to my surprise, he declined. I have a strong suspicion that Mike was supposed to be at work somewhere at that time, but my imagination was working overtime now. Maybe he had a warrant out for his arrest? Perhaps he was a serial killer?
Wow.
I'm sure Mike's a good guy. His help was instrumental for my day. So, Mike, if you see this, forgive my imagination.
No.
We had a good conversation before he turned around. Once I was back on the highway, I stopped again for a snack with nothing but a cement barrier to sit on.
So I'm back on the Trans-Canada Highway, and for lack of a better place to have a snack, I'm just sitting on the barrier here enjoying my apple. I have no idea how I got here. It was like a maze of different streets and highways. I just followed a guy named Mike and got me this far.
Traffic was relatively light. The terrain was not flat anymore, which slowed me down significantly. I eventually got to the first exit for Hope, Flood Hope Road. It was still 8 kilometers from the actual town, but the Wild Rose Campground was within a short distance of the exit. I decided to stop early and stay overnight. After my tent was set up, I fell asleep for a bit. I was really tired that afternoon, but also out of food and in need of laundry detergent. It meant that I had to ride to town and back before I could eat supper, wash my clothes, and eventually crawl into the tent. The weather was picture perfect when I left my campsite for the ride to town. I enjoyed looking around and decided to pop into the visitor center to find out about the KVR, but it was closed. I found a grocery store right away, but wasn't so lucky with my search for methyl hydrate, the fuel for my stove. It would have meant sandwiches for supper again, instead of a hot meal. This wasn't what I had been looking forward to, so I stopped at a gas station on the outskirts of town that carried Gasline antifreeze, which is essentially alcohol. By that time, some dark clouds had appeared in the sky and the wind had picked up substantially. I got a little worried about my tent and was suddenly in a hurry to get back there. That was also the first time I got soaked on my tour. And it was my introduction to mountain weather that can change from bright sunshine to a storm without warning in no time at all.
Well, what can you do? I ran into a storm, and it's just from the way back from Hope. I got a campsite here just down the street, and it was beautiful weather when I left it to get some supplies, and now I'm riding back in this storm. I already got soaked, but it's a little bit better now. Just a bit windy. I'm getting close to the campsite. Hopefully my tent is still there.
The tent was fine when I arrived at the campsite, soaked from a heavy shower that had crossed my way. It had obviously rained at the campground as well, but all my stuff was dry inside the tent, which was a good sign. I managed to cook macaroni and cheese mixed with a can of spicy chili at my picnic table. Later, I was doing laundry at the campground where I met another visitor, a young lady from Germany who was on a trip across the Rockies with a friend in a rented camper. She told me about their planned tour to Banff and Jasper. When I told her that I was going across the entire country by bicycle, her jaw dropped. I'm not sure if she actually believed me, and to be honest, I was beyond tired. I wasn't so sure myself at that point. After the young lady left the laundry room, it got really boring. I was sitting by myself, staring at the dryer while more rain was pouring down outside. Okay, I'm at the campground doing my laundry. Another half hour to dry. Next week I'll tell you about the adventure trying to follow the world famous KVR, short for Kettle Valley Rail Trail. Join me for it. The surefire way to do that is to hit the like and subscribe buttons, but you probably know that already. Cheers, and I'll see you then.